The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We will be starting shortly. Please excuse the technical difficulties at the time. Good afternoon. Welcome to the .Bank webinar for banks who haven't yet registered .Bank. I'd like to let you know that these slides can be found and downloaded at www.encirca.com/ICBA following the presentation. So I'd like to introduce you to our presenters today. First, we have Lily Thomas, ICBA Vice President and Senior Regulatory Counsel, responsible for ICBA's cybersecurity advocacy. She also participated in FTLD's Security Requirements Working Group. Then we have Craig Schwartz, FTLD Registry Managing Director, managing .Bank and .Insurance domain registries. Former Chief Registry Liaison with ICANN. And finally, myself, Andrew Barrett, Encirca Product Manager. Encirca is the sole registrar serving on .Bank's Security Requirements Working Group. It was founded in 2001 in Boston, Massachusetts. And this will be our agenda for the webinar today. We'll start off with an introduction to new GTLDs, move on to bank policies, and then registration process and costs, and then finally .Bank activation roadmap. If you do have any questions throughout the webinar, please enter them into the GoToWebinar widget, and all questions will be held and answered at the end of the webinar. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Lily Thomas.
Thanks. Before going into the specifics regarding .Bank, I want to share some general information about the assignment and management of Internet addresses. The Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, commonly known as ICANN, is a not-for-profit organization that coordinates how unique Internet addresses are assigned worldwide. Basically, ICANN is the Internet regulator. Several years ago, ICANN decided to expand generic top-level domains. The letters in the Internet domain name immediately following the dot from the previous level to hundreds and possibly thousands once the multi-year expansion is complete. Registrars must be accredited by ICANN and approved by the operator of .Bank and .Insurance, FTLD Registry Services, LLC. We're very excited that the general availability period for .Bank is quickly approaching, or it has approached. The .Insurance generic top-level domain will launch this fall. Community banks with insurance agencies will be interested in the .Insurance domain. Next slide, please. .Bank is owned and operated by the financial services community, which includes a coalition of banks of various sizes, insurance companies, and financial services trade associations from around the world. only verified members of the global banking community are eligible to register domains. For banks, it includes charter verification with the registrant's regulator. Domains must correspond to legal names, which eliminates cyber squatting. For example, ABC Bank would not be able to register xyz.bank. .bank has unique security requirements as well as ongoing monitoring to ensure compliance with security requirements. .bank is a trusted, protected, and more secure online location for banking services. Each applicant is verified as a legitimate member of the banking industry before being permitted to register for .bank. .bank establishes a solid foundation on which a bank can securely communicate with customers, stakeholders, and regulators. The security bar is much higher for financial institutions than other companies conducting business over the Internet, given their roles as trusted financial intermediaries for their customers. .bank is poised to be the recognized online platform for growth and innovation in the banking sector. ICBA applauds the formation of FTLD Registry, the registry operator for .bank and .insurance, and is pleased to serve as a founder, investor, and endorser of FTLD Registry. We believe it is critical to protect and serve the financial services community by creating a secure financial services channel on the Internet. Additionally, we believe it is interest of the financial services industry to own, operate, and govern its own top-level domains. We are also very pleased to be working with NSERCA to help community banks understand and register for the new .bank generic top-level domain. As part of the agreement, community banks will be able to access a unique website with information and resources about securing and activating .bank domain names. NSERCA and ICBA will also host frequent webinars allowing community banks to learn about the eligibility for a .bank domain, the registration process, as well as implementation tips. Additionally, ICBA members will be able to take advantage of preferred pricing for .bank registration. Thanks.
Thank you, Lily. So now let's talk about .bank by the numbers. I'd like to introduce you to Craig Schwartz if you'd like to handle this.
Thanks, Andrew, and thanks for all of the ICBA members that are on the call, as well as for NSERCA continuing to provide these type of webinars to educate stakeholders. So we launched .bank in May of this last year and moved into what's called our general availability period in June, and are really, really pleased by the response to date. As you can see on the screen, we've had just a little bit more than 5,000 domains registered by banks within the United States across nearly 2,500 individual banks. So if you do some quick math, it looks like on the average every bank is applying for a couple of domain names. When we look at the geographic distribution of all of the names, we do have registrations from every state, and Texas, Missouri, and Massachusetts are leading the way. If you have a chance and you want to look for some additional information, on October 21st, FTLD published a blog on its website at www.register.bank that goes into a little bit more information about the statistics. Currently, about 90% of the registrations are coming from banks in the United States. The other 10% are coming from those abroad. And the disparity between the distribution is largely because the ICBA's involvement domestically has enabled us to reach a lot of people very quickly and is driving that volume. And we haven't done a big push internationally, but we'll start to do so after the first of the year. Next slide, Andrew. So it looks like we're going on to me for registry policies, and we'll start with strict eligibility for .bank. So at a very high level, what makes us different than every other new top-level domain registry operator or those new internet web extensions is that we operate in a very highly restricted manner, both with regard to the types of entities that are eligible to participate, the types of domain names that can be registered, and how specifically those domain names may be used. So this slide speaks to who the eligible entities are around the world to participate. And you can see most of this is associated with banks themselves, regulated banking entities. We do enable banking trade associations such as the ICBA to participate. We also enable groups of banking associations such as the European Banking Federation, whose members themselves are other banking trade groups around Europe. We also do enable industry service providers, and this may be more commonly known to you as core processors or technology service providers. The FiServs, the First Data, the FIS is the Jack Henrys of the providers here in the United States, and those are just some examples. And we enable those types of entities to participate given the unique role and often critical role that they play in a bank's online infrastructure and its web presence. So we felt it was very important to enable service providers to participate. And then lastly, if government regulators are interested in having a .bank domain, we don't have an issue. We do note that these last two categories do require board approval. And if you look at the full scope of the more than 5,000 names that have been registered so far from the United States, I'd say 98% of those, maybe a little bit higher, are from banks themselves, and then the other scattered few are from trade associations and service providers. So next slide, please. So Lily mentioned early that bank has enhanced security requirements. That is a set of guidelines and practices that are mandatory for those that choose to participate in the space. Here is a sampling of those, including mandatory verification and re-verification to ensure that the bank or the organization seeking the domain name is actually authorized to do that. Domain name security extensions, which is an internet protocol that effectively is intended to ensure that when someone is seeking out your website, that they actually get to your website and not some fake one or not or redirected to a place where they didn't intend to be. So it's important that your customers and your visitors are actually getting to your actual website. Email authentication is a methodology to help the email service providers of the world, the Googles, the Microsofts, the Yahoos. It helps them determine how to deliver the email that you send. And for example, if you set a policy that says, I only send email from the following IP addresses, and Google receives an email purporting to be from your domain name, but it's not from an IP address that you've identified, the rule that is then set up is for Google to not deliver that email at all. So its primary purpose is to pretty much eliminate spoofing and mitigate a lot of the phishing that happens in the banking sector. We do mandate strong encryption practices to ensure that the integrity of the communications that you have with your customers and/or partners is protected and not intercepted and/or misconfigured. We do require multi-factor authentication, and this is for your access as a domain name holder to your registrar. And if you happen to use Encirca, there would be multi-factor authentication between you and Encirca that would need to be followed in order for you to change information associated with your registration. Multi-factor authentication in this context is not that you have to implement this for your customers that are accessing your banking websites. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that there are two very different roles for multi-factor authentication, and we're talking about how you access information at your registrar. We do prohibit the enabling of proxy or privacy registration services. What this means is you can't use a privacy service to register your domain names on your behalf. We actually have to be able to see who the real owner of a domain name is at all times. And we have this policy in place largely because law enforcement has told us that it's incredibly hard to track down the bad guys when proxy or privacy registration services are used. And so we've strictly forbidden it in .bank and well in .insurance. And the requirement to use a .bank name server, and this is something that Andrew may get to a bit more in his presentation, but the crux of this requirement is that we as the owner-operator of .bank have control over what happens with a .bank domain. And if we did, for example, enable the use of name servers in other web extensions, be it .com or .net or .org, that we would not have any oversight for those name servers. So to preserve the integrity of the registry and our security in .bank and .insurance, we require the use of .bank name servers. Next slide, please. So another one of the elements of the restricted nature of .bank is in how you choose your domain names. And we specifically require that your domain name must correspond to your trademark, your trade name, or your service mark. And that is to ensure that domain names are only getting in the hands of entities or banks that should have them. If, for example, you're seeking a name that you don't have a trademark to, and trademarks are not actually required in .bank, although it does make the verification process move a little bit more quickly if you have a trademark registration, but it's not necessary. As long as you can demonstrate a right to that name, and it may be a common law right that you've obtained through having used a name over an extended period of time, that is adequate for us. So you can be pretty creative with your names as long as you can correlate them to your trademarks, your trade names, or your service marks. You must not be a reserved name, and we have a number of names identified on our website that are either a common community or generic, or in some cases names that ICANN has required us to reserve. And those names, at least for now, are not available. It doesn't mean that you can't be, again, creative with how you structure your name. So if the name community is on the reserve list, and it is, you can't register the name community.bank, but if you are, for example, the Community Bank of Texas, you might be interested in Community TX, or you might be interested in CTX.bank. So a lot of flexibility in the names that you choose. Domain names are limited to alphanumeric characters. This is not something unique to .bank. It's just the way that it is in the domain name space. And at least for now, one character and two-letter names are not available, although we may choose to release them at some future point in time. Next slide, please. So this slide goes to the flexibility that I've already referenced on how you might structure your name. These are all fictitious names, and we've made up the corresponding name, domain names as well. But just to give you an idea of what you can do and what is permissible under the rules of .bank. One of the key features, or one of the key benefits of the .bank domain registry, notwithstanding the extra security requirements, are that its ability to, or I should say an opportunity to get more desirable domain names that are shorter and more memorable. And for many of you that have been around a long time, you know that it was probably difficult to get the name that you ideally would have liked to have in .com or .net. And so with .bank being new, or still relatively new at this point, there's still a lot of flexibility in the types of domain names that you can secure. Next slide, please. And I think this is when I pass it back to you, Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. And now I'm going to talk about the registration process and their costs. So .bank is a first-come, first-served domain name. That means the first person to request a specific domain name will be awarded to it if they fall in the name eligibility requirements. It is open to all banks worldwide, not just the US, and they have no preference for .com owners or trademark owners. Requested domain name is checked for availability to start off, and once it is reserved at the registry. Once you reserve your requested domain name, a verification process will start by a third-party company called Symantec. They are in charge of vetting all requests for domain names and ensuring that you have the rights to the name you requested. When you complete the verification process, your name will be released from the pending status and ready to use. So this is the verification process for .bank. It occurs after the registration is successfully submitted. There's a slew of information being verified during this process, such as security checks. We check the organization, the jurisdiction, and the banking credentials, whether that be if you provided an FDIC number or another regulatory authority number. They will also verify the domain name selection, along with the physical address provided. They will then verify the primary telephone number for the bank and the contact, employment, and authority number. So you will be providing an HR contact and a manager employee number, and they will literally be called by Symantec, the verification agent, to ensure that they are full-time employees of the bank. We expect this to take less than 5 days, and it will be performed at least every 2 years. So Encirca's pricing is $999 per year per domain name. This includes both the verification and registration fees. There are no hidden application fees. ICBA members that pay via credit card will receive a 10% discount. At your shopping cart checkout, please be sure to enter in the ICBA member discount code, which is seen on the screen here. It is all capital letters, ICBA-member-DISC, the first 4 letters of discount. Prepayment is required in order to start the registration process for .bank. The payment options are via credit card, check, ACH, or bank wire. The discount only applies to payments via credit card. So moving forward to the .bank activation roadmap, once you register your name, here are the next steps. I would like to remind you, please enter all questions into the question box of your GoToWebinar widget, and we will get to them at the end of the presentation. So we start off registering your name goes through the verification process, and you're successfully awarded your requested .bank domain name. Now, in order to get your name up and running, you require DNS hosting. Moving forward to website hosting and email hosting so that you can use and operate your website. And then finally, you need to take into consideration marketing for your new domain name. And going forward, finally, with threat monitoring. So once you get your name, it's up and running, Encirca will actually award you a DNS premium package for a free 3-month trial. And this includes DNSSEC and .bank vanity name servers, which are required to be in compliance with .bank, and a landing page, as seen here. So this will simply be a fully compliant .bank landing page. It has DNSSEC, vanity name servers, and an SSL certificate. And a user can click on the button in the middle and it'll redirect you to your current .com site. So the purpose of this is to get your .bank website indexed immediately by Google and start building some credibility in the Google search results while you get ready to migrate and transfer over to your .bank branding. .bank domains do not need to be activated right away. Banks can continue to use their existing .com names indefinitely. It is completely acceptable to run both your .com and your .bank name in parallel. In order to be in compliance, .bank domains must use .bank branded DNS name servers. An example would be for the URL rockport.bank, they would have name servers such as ns1.rockport.bank and ns2.rockport.bank. Encirca can provide this service with you in the DNS. .bank domains must use SSL encryption, DNSSEC, and DMARC. Each of these are designed to ensure that .bank is a trusted, reliable namespace and protected from malicious intent. We will activate your names, as I mentioned earlier, to start building search engine history for SEO. We will activate it via the landing page that I showed earlier. So your next steps would be to secure your desired .bank domain name at www.encirca.com/ICBA. You can find the registration form there where we collect all the required information and commence your registration process. And then once you do this, you can start planning the process for migration. A complete thorough planning guide can be found at www.register.bank/guide. Has lots of helpful information on the additional security requirements to be in compliance and the next steps going forward internally and externally. If you'd like help along the way in this process, Encirca, of course, is here to offer assistance. You can schedule a free consultation with us. Simply email icba@encirca.com, and we'd be more than happy to schedule a phone call, walk through you and your team on the process of securing a .bank. And that is our presentation today. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. I'd like to thank the panelists, Lily Thomas and Craig Schwartz. Again, if you do have any questions, please feel free to email us at icba@encirca.com, and we're more than happy to assist. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.